and kicking off the end of the week into the weekend on a high note, having you here. So thanks for making time this Friday afternoon to have a great conversation. Yeah, it's so great to see you. So yes, hello from Seattle, I see. Hi. You guys have any comments or questions for us, please don't forget to drop those in our comment box, and as well, hit subscribe for any updates so you can see all of our upcoming broadcasts and all of this great fun that we'll be having talking about get your life together in 2021, right? We can all use some advice on how we can up level. So without further ado, Thomas, I would love for you to just share a little bit more about you and your work.
Awesome. So my name is Thomas Edwards. I am a transformational coach. Essentially what I do is I help and support people in finding their happiness and fulfillment in life without the need to sacrifice success. And how I do that is by literally making life a game that they can play, win, and have fun doing by combining personal transformation with game design, creating this one-of-a-kind, very unique experience that should not be missed.
I love that though. Like there's so much happening too in the gaming space. Definitely want to talk about that because there's a lot of parallels with life, like you're saying. And I think that's so cool when we think about life in that way, right? It's sort of like, how do we gamify our own life to have more fun in what we're doing and the experiences that we're taking in? And, we talked about this before, but like enjoying the journey along the way, which I think we sometimes forget to do all the like craziness of the day to day, So I love that you said that. And I'd love to talk a little bit more as to like how you got here and like how that became a part of all that you're doing, not only on the gaming side, but as well, definitely around the one up effect and what that means.
Yeah, it's a long story. I'll condense it as best as I possibly can. So back in 2009, I started my first coaching business, which is called The Professional Wingman. And it was designed to help singles find love and be in long-term relationships. And dubbed the Wingman, I was able to quickly create a lot of success, not just in being seen all around the media, from being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal to being on the Steve Harvey Show, but I actually got some people together, over 300 marriages and engagements, thousands of relationships. It was a hit. I even found my own true love and got married as well. And when I hit the peak of my success, this idea of wanting to be the best in the world at what I did was so my identity that when I was able to actually see the body of my work and what I was able to accomplish, the fulfillment and the happiness and the joy that I thought I was going to experience, I didn't have. And that was a really, really depressing experience for me. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know where to go from there. So this started this very downward spiral of me just trying to figure out who I am. Being very depressed, lots of alcohol and drug abuse, and just being unsure of where my life was going to go. A few years later, my wife is pregnant, and what was the greatest day of my life was also one of the worst, because it was in that moment that the identity that I was holding on so dear to, the Wingman, died. And I spent the next 2.5 years essentially mourning the death, actively mourning the death of that identity, to the point where everything in my life was falling apart and I was losing everything. And when it got to as bad as it did, my wife spoke up and said, hey, this is not the marriage that I signed up for. Something really needs to change. And she did say it that way, but I interpreted it as I need to do something. And with all the success that I had and what came after it and the tools that I had that got me to where I was, I didn't have the tools to get me out of the situation. So I finally, raised my hand and said, hey, I need some help. I need some guidance. And it was in that moment where I look back and I say, I got that first one up. I got that first extra life where I knew that I could live my life differently. And I went through a cornucopia, if you will, transformational experiences that I chronicled and just journaled and really kept track of. And it got to the point where my life was very different. It definitely was transformed, and I was living a much better life than I was previously, but something was still missing. Like deep down in my soul, I knew that I wasn't having fun. Like I wasn't happy. Sure, I had great things in my life. I had a stable marriage. I had a happy family. My business was getting better. And I was able to maintain a lot of the responsibilities that I created for myself. But I knew that there was more to life than just fulfilling obligations and responsibilities. Like I get to have fun. And so I challenged myself to find out what that fun looks like for me. And that's when I reconnected with my first true love, video games. And I remember picking up the controller for the first time, what felt like ages, and just feeling this electric charge through my body. And I decided, hey, you know what? I want to keep this in my life. How can I do that? And I decided, well, why don't I just pursue professional aspirations, like actually compete? So I went to my first tournament and did okay, especially for like a first timer, total newbie. But more importantly, I had so much fun. Like it was the kind of fun that I remembered having when I was a kid, just being at home, playing video games with my friends all day. And I was like, man, why can't my life be that way? Like, why can't I have fun like that in all other areas? And then that's when it dawned on me, why not make life a game? Why not find a way to make life a game in such a way that you can win and have those moments of victory and success, but more importantly, have fun along the way? And I looked back at all the transformational work that I've done, not just for myself, but also the work that I've done with my clients, which spans over a decade. And I put together this experience that really, for me, is why I'm here on this planet. I didn't know what my purpose was for so long, and a lot of that led me to just the darkness that existed. And on the other side came this ultimate gift, which is really to show people that they can live a life full of happiness, love, joy, peace, and fulfillment. And they don't need to sacrifice success or achievement. It doesn't need to happen. You can have both. And so here we are. And the one-up effect was born right then and there. And the idea of the one-up effect is to live your life like you found an extra one. How appropriate.
What a powerful journey and story. And thank you so much for just being so vulnerable to share that, Thomas, and just really getting real. And I think you and I chatted about this before, but like getting real with yourself, that can be really hard, right? To kind of face those things, in our lives that are maybe weighing us down, or, maybe it was an identity, maybe it was a relationship, whatever it is, it's a little bit different for everybody, but, and maybe it's just me, it could be something inside of you that's holding you back. So I love that you took all of that growth, personal growth and self-development, and said, wait, there's a way I can help others. But beyond that, I found my own purpose. And I think that is so awesome. So I'd love to talk a little bit about purpose, because I think that's something that, it's just an interesting thing, right? It takes a long time, I think, sometimes for us to really hone in onto what that is. There's a lot of things about like, oh, well, write down the things you love and do all these other practices and you'll get to what you love. And I think I'd love some tangible ideas or tips that you've shared, in your work with people of how they can get closer to tapping into their purpose and finding that for themselves.
Yeah, for me, purpose, the idea of purpose before all of this was really externally driven, right? Like, why am I here? How can I matter to other people? How can I be loved and praised and cheered, right, by others? That, to me, at the time, felt like where my purpose came from. And honestly, like, the professional wingman served that purpose. I got to really be a part of people's journey and helping them find love. And there are kids born, dozens and dozens of kids are born, and I'm in the conversation of how they actually exist. You know, there was a lot of validation that came from me that made me feel like I was fulfilling a purpose. This purpose that I have now, and by the way, your purpose can change throughout the course of your life. I believe this is my life's purpose. I have no idea what tomorrow brings, right? I'm confident that this will continue to be my purpose, but you just never know, right? You never know what life will throw your way. I certainly didn't. And so your purpose, for one thing that I want people to understand is your purpose can shift and evolve as you do. The second thing is, my purpose where it is now is from specifically an internally driven source, because the biggest transformation that I had to experience, the darkest of the dark that I had to go through, helps me find this. And what a gift for me to be able to find that I now get to share with other people, right? And that for me really connected what I believe purpose truly is something that you see in yourself, or you discover in yourself, that you make it your purpose to share with other people. And it could be anything, the way I work inside the one-up effect with my clients around in the world of purpose. As we talk about a game, there's 4 worlds that we play in, and each world has 3 levels, which means at the end of each level, there is a mini boss. So in the world of purpose, there's 3 levels, which govern various levels of wellness. So it's physical at the ground level, mental wellness at the 2nd level, and then spiritual wellness at the 3rd level. And it's designed to be in that order. Because while you exist on this planet, you need to have a body that can carry out purpose, right? And so taking care of your body is the first component. Second is, carrying out your purpose is not necessarily an easy task. It can be simple, and it'll present as challenges. So being able to mentally be able to manage, whether it's the day-to-day activities or the long-term vision of holding that vision of your purpose. And then the 3rd level eventually leads to understanding, the various powers that exist and energies that exist beyond what you tangibly see and can feel, and connecting to a sense of peace from within. Whether or not you agree with the power that exists is irrelevant. It's really just about coming into a level of peace within yourself that can allow you to also continue to carry out that long-term vision. So when you talk about tangible ideas, I would say take care of your body first. Your body is the instrument. Your body is the tool that will allow you to carry out your purpose. Mentally, meditate. That's really what it is, and I can even say that for the 3rd level. I would say even at the mental place, journal. Really be able to talk about and express yourself. What are you feeling? What's happening in your life that's charging you? You don't need to share this with other people. It certainly helps if you do, but being able to get it out of here and down where you can actually see it and maybe have some connection to it, you might see things very differently once it's outside of your head. And so I find that to be a very beneficial tool. And there are various different ways you can journal. I even was able to create my own journal that I allow my clients to use that is essentially a conversation between your ego and your soul. Because typically the stories of your life are dictated by your ego or your soul. And so being able to have a conversation with the 2 of them can really lead to some amazing revelations. And then the 3rd level for spiritual wellness is really just meditation, being able to be with yourself, be in silence, and connect with the inner voice that is deep within, and hear what that voice has to say in leading the best life you possibly can. So those are, say, the 3 tangible ideas around purpose.
So good.
Find your purpose, but those are things that I know for me helped me get there.
Yeah, the things that just the tools that helped you get there for sure. You are dropping so many gems, Thomas, and it's just awesome because I think we sometimes put so much pressure on ourselves that we like have to be at a certain place by a certain time or, whatever. But I love that you said purpose can change. Like we are in control. You talked about this too of our lives. We should have fun along the way. So yeah, one thing may change and that's okay. Multiple things may change. It's okay. You're on your own timeline. You're on your own journey. It is your journey. Embrace it. Love it. Yeah, there's going to be those times that you said there's the down moments, it's human, be a human experience, but it's about, just taking that time. And I think too, and I want to address a question from JP on happiness. So JP, we'll get to that in 1 second here. And if you guys have questions, yes, don't forget to for sure put them in the comments. We'd love to address them as we're going through here. So Thomas, do you think the pandemic has forced people to slow down?
Absolutely. They didn't have a choice. So many of us were so programmed into our routines that we didn't even know, for one, that we were in them, and two, that we wanted them. And now these routines, such as going to work or leaving your kids to go to work, those two things I think were the biggest ones. But also for a lot of people, having the time to be in their space, their own space, right? Which then leads it to being with themselves. It has really forced people, sometimes willingly and sometimes reluctantly, to really address the major issues or challenges that they've ignored or allowed themselves to ignore due to the convenience of having that type of routine in their lives. And so when you see studies and surveys of people being more depressed than they've ever been, the United States is amongst the most unhappy countries in the world. And this is before the pandemic, right? And so it's not a surprise. It's just not a surprise. And when we look at it at its core, it's because we're very overworked. We don't feel that we have time to allow ourselves to have fun. And I also believe ultimately there's a lot of stories that may think that we're not deserving of being able to have that fun too. And I share this from personal experience. I was raised under many stories that revolved specifically around success and security, and fun being kind of a side effect of those things, right? That it would just come, right? How many people, here, and you and I have this conversation that, like, when we talk about dating, right? I'll use that as an example. If you just wait, he'll show up. Or like, you don't need to go out and find it. It'll be there. You know what I mean? Like, these are the kind of stories we've been told for so long that just doesn't apply to so many of us. But we've taken them on because we didn't know any other way. We didn't feel like we had a choice, right? So the pandemic has definitely opened up some eyes to people realizing, oh, I have a choice in how I want to live my life now. So what does that look like? And it's scary 100%. When you don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, always the fear of the unknown. I mean, for anyone, no one likes to, and that's why I think so many people, like you said, like these are the stories they tell themselves. They might not be good ones, but we're comfortable in those stories, right? Like that's what we know, but it may not be good, and that's okay, So I love what you said there. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I wrote a column recently for Authority Magazine on what you were talking about. One of the columns was 5 tips for business leaders to have a fantastic work culture. And one of the questions from the editor for me in the interview was how and why are Americans like, so there was a stat in Forbes, I don't have it off the top of my head, but to your point about just American workers being so unhappy, like, and so many just like being done, you know, with the corporate workforce or whatever, becoming entrepreneurs, I think, which has definitely expanded in the pandemic. Like you said, people getting closer, taking the time, being able to have that time to really say, am I where I want to be? Am I doing what I want to be doing? Is it with the people I want to be doing it with? Right. Has forced a lot of those questions. But I would completely agree. And my answer to that was, yes, we're overworked, you know, especially pre-pandemic, right? We were, you know, told these are the hours, you know, you have to work in. You know, there's this expectation of being always on. So like, I expect you to respond. And if you don't, well, then you weren't responsible. You didn't check your email, or, you know, maybe there was something like, you know, a team issue, but, you know, you're not a team player if you decide to take off too much time, even though we have an unlimited PTO policy, which, by the way, I think is crazy, because it's like, how do you like even regulate something like that? So, you know, there's a lot of benefits promised to people with jobs, right? And then it's really like, you have to, I think, take a hard look and really evaluate that. And I think the beginning process of that stages is where like employers to employees can be more vulnerable to really ask those tough questions, you know, really make sure this is a fit for you. But I just wanted to touch on that because yeah, those stats definitely continue. And unless we see some change at that, you know, kind of just holistic level, we will still have overworked, unhappy Americans, even virtually. You know, some people are saying I've had to be on more. I don't really now have that like physical separation of my work in my home that I used to have. So, you know, it's presented challenges, but I think, like you said, you know, really taking the time to evaluate what is working for you, what's not, having those honest conversations with yourself, being willing to be open to making the changes, even if they feel difficult. You know, a lot of those changes, the things we're most unwilling to do, are likely the things that we need to do. So I don't know if you want to add on to that, but I thought that was such a critical point you addressed, especially as it relates to the workforce and business. And that's something we practice at Heart and Soul, and everything that we're doing at the firm is like, our company culture is everything, you know?
Well, you know, I'm in the process of writing a book right now called The One Up Effect. And in one of the chapters, like, I talk about the importance of applying this to corporate wellness. You know, so many major companies have gotten away with offering these amazing perks without actually having to hold employees accountable to actually use them. And what we're seeing now is employees are getting burnt out and they're not taking care of themselves. And for so long, like, companies have gotten away with it not being their responsibility. Yeah. And now, like, you know, it's important for companies to take a stand and say, hey, your wellness is as important as your employee performance. And honestly, if any company was smart, they'd be able to connect the dots and say, man, if my employees are healthy, they're actually going to be performing at a much higher level than they are right now. So I'm actually incentivized to see what I can do to help boost their wellness, right? And so I see now, especially now, because we don't have places to go to, right? Everyone's staying at home, and now the line between work and life doesn't exist. Right? I mean, imagine being in New York City, in like a 400 square foot apartment, if you even have that, and your commute to work is literally rolling across the bed. Right. If you don't have that level of separation, it makes it very difficult to see what part of your life is actually life and what's work. And early studies actually from, I believe it was MIT, actually said that people are actually working more during the pandemic because of what you just said, which is like the feeling of needing to be on and available. So like the average work week has gone up, based on these studies, a little bit over an hour, right? So now overworked people are working even more. You know, and so it's interesting to see all this. And I do believe that there are companies like the Googles, like the Apples, that are trying to figure out what they can do to help their employees, but also to set a tone of how employee culture around wellness can actually be executed well. And my mission is to be a part of that conversation, because I feel like this is a huge part of the sustainability of us, not necessarily as professionals, right, as workers, but as humans.
Yeah.
You know?
100%. The human capital. I was having that conversation with someone too, and that's core at the center of what we do too. And I agree with you. I want to be a part of any of those conversations. Our mission is to change how bring back the humanity in business, right? We are humans. We're not just worker bees. We're not just set out to, be on our computers all day and just, be robots at all. So yeah. And I think it does start at the top. I will say that that's another thing I was contributing in that interview, is that there's a lot of beautiful things, beautiful manifestos I've seen written, beautiful mission statements, all these things that are communicated, but then are you acting upon them? I think that's critical. And a lot of times too, management, for whatever reason, get sucked into the day-to-day operationals, financials, whatever that might be. But we have, whoever that is in that space, that you have the power to be the first. Don't wait for someone else to do it. If you say you're going to do it, do it. And I think that's really powerful. And like you said, that's going to change the narrative, because it has to happen from, that whole level across the board.
And we just have to stop buying into the story that in order for a performance to be an all-time level, that there needs to be sacrifice. And I just don't believe that's true. Like, I've done more in the past 2 years in the happiest state of mind than I had done in the 10 years before that, when I wasn't happy. Right. And my capacity for growth is unlimited in comparison to where I was before. And so wellness, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, they all matter as much as the numbers do. And I'll tell you, the companies that figure this out, they're going to be on the forefront of long-term success and employee retention, which is something that is also very important. As we've seen, like, the millennial generation like to have a lot of jobs before they're 30, right? So, if you really want to find ways to retain your employees, this is the way to do that. People want to have fun working,
For sure.
I do want to get to JP's question, like he said, because I think it's a really great question, right?
It's a really good one. Yeah. So the question is, for everyone that's listening in, is happiness, quote unquote, a result of a quote unquote event or a state of mind, psychologically speaking?
Yeah. So happiness is a state of being, right? It's not even a state of mind, right? Because happiness is actually a feeling, right? It's something that you actually feel. Of course, you can use your mind to convince yourself that you are happy. But I also believe that's a totally different. Happiness is a state of being, and you can be happy right now. You don't need an external environment or an event to take place in order for you to have that. Of course, there are people, there are places, there are things, and there are experiences that can trigger your happiness. But one of the things that I've learned, and what I support my clients in understanding, is really looking into those people, places, things, and experiences that make you happy. Become more intimate with the feelings and the embodiment of that happiness, and learn how you can actually trigger that and inspire that on call, right? And when you get, like, for example, like me saying the word video games, like, did you notice how, like, I started, like, smiling? Like, just even saying it makes me happy. Like, it triggers happiness, right? And so I can start to think about it, and immediately it makes me happy. But then I don't have to have video games present in order for me to maintain or sustain that level of happiness that I had, And so for those who might have struggles or challenges with just being able to, like, embody the happiness really on demand, really start at, what are those people, places, and things that make you happy, and feel into the why of it, and see if you can carry that why with you without having the stimulation of those people, places, or things to depend on that level of happiness. I hope that answers your question, JP.
Yeah, no, that was great, Thomas. And yeah, I would just add, I completely agree with all the things you've said. And you know, there's a lot of stories. There's people out there, you know, billionaires, all you can read about it, who said, I wanted this thing or a set of things. Once I
Hmm.
got it, I was not like, it's like, oh, I got it. Like, what's next? Or maybe even not
Yes.
what's next. It's not as happy as I thought it would be for me, right? So it can't be
Yeah.
dependent on that.
Yeah. Our minds dictate a lot of that, you know, and so whatever we see or whatever we see or think is going to make us happy will actually never make us as happy once we get it. Like if you were to put a number to it, it would never be equal. So if you think like having that dope job or getting that raise is going to like be a 10 out of 10 for happiness, it might the moment you get it, but the moment right after that, it's gonna go 9, 8, 7 to wherever wherever your baseline, your new baseline is going to be. It's and immediately, like you said, your mind's gonna think, oh well, I'm not at a 10 anymore. So technically I'm not as happy as I thought I was gonna be. So what's next? Maybe I
Yeah.
need more money. Maybe I need a different job. Maybe and so the things that we believe that are going to make us happy, it's not that they don't make us happy. They do. It's just not for as long and not as much as we think we do. And so
Mhm.
it's just important to really do some inventory around like the whys of it all, right? And try to see if you can source that happiness maybe even before you have that thing, right? Like before
Absolutely.
you reach that accomplishment, there's a possibility that you can feel the experience of happiness as if you had it.
Mhm. I love
Sounds like a
that,
lot of
the
ideas right
feeling
there.
part. Yeah. Well, I
Mm,
was doing a meditation recently, and I agree with what you said earlier too about meditation and however that practice is for you guys. One tool I've been using that we've talked about, Thomas, is Insight Timer. There's a bunch of things out there, but in that case, you can find meditations at 5, 10 minutes, whatever works for you. And that's something else we've talked about recently in this series is like anybody can do something for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is. You don't have to go crazy. We're not saying sit for an hour and be with your thoughts. I mean, that's great too. But there's a lot of really great things. And one of the meditations I did recently was the smiling meditation, where
mm,
literally you're like, you work on just smiling throughout it, and then it even you feel how that changes the rest of your body, your heart. Imagine your arms smiling, and what then you can radiate, and then even attracting those things to you. So if you're really visualizing, what does that look like as it's coming to me, who's around me, all the things, like really like, give yourself the time and the space and the freedom for imagination and fun, like you said, Thomas. And then as those you have those feelings, feel what that experience will be like, because it's so much about that versus necessarily the thing. So yeah, no, totally. JPIC wrote here, contentment can be interpreted as happiness, as in finding a meaning in life. Whereas a person might be content but not necessarily happy. Right. Exactly. I think contentment for sure
yeah,
is definitely,
contentment also is associated with like satisfaction, right? Where
yeah.
you're satisfied. And let's face it, the most ambitious people on this planet who have done amazing things, and you can look back to the history of the world, the people who've done the craziest stuff we've seen and who've been the most innovative of our lifetimes, they weren't satisfied.
Mhm.
Right? And that's also okay too, right? Like there's a it's not always black and white. It's not either or. You can have a sense of satisfaction with where your life is and also be driven to create more for yourself or to become more. Like you can take that path and that's okay. Some people may not
Yeah.
want to, and that's also okay too. But there is something to that. I mean, I'll share personally, like I am very content with my life, like especially with where I came from. And I'm also I mean, I look to my right and I have a whiteboard of not just to-dos, but visions of where I want to take my life. And it requires a lot from me and it requires a lot of ambition from me. And I'm okay with that. If I don't get it, does it mean that like my life sucks? No. Right. But I am the type that wants to always be planting a pin on my map that's a little bit further from where I am right now. And I love the pursuit of trying to figure out how I can get there and enjoying the process of getting there if I even do.
Enjoying the process, have fun with it. Yeah. One of the coaches I worked with in the past said, you're in your like, fishbowl and you're like swimming and like, it's cool. Like you have a chance to look above, see what's happening. Cool. It's there, whatever that analogy is that works for you. But I thought that was so cool. Like my life isn't a to-do list. It's something I get to do and have fun along the way and enjoy the experience, like you said. But you made 3 really great points related to what you just said, Thomas, in one of our prior IG lives. Who am I? Where am I now? So, and where do I want to go? Right? Did I say that right?
Yeah. I use Google Maps as a great analogy for this, right? And so you need to have 2 points in order to have for Google Maps to work, right? So this the first location is like your current location. So if your current location isn't enabled, Google has no idea where you are. Right. So you got to know, where you are and exactly what location you are. So that means just your tendencies, your personality, your characteristics, like your entire character makeup. Right. And when I think about it in terms of a game, like who is the character that you are choosing to play this game called your life? Right. And how intimate do you know this character? Do you know its strengths, its weaknesses? How it views the world, how it perceives the world views it, the character. What is ratings, right? All these things. And then you need that other location, right? Like where are you trying to go? And the beauty of when you put that second location, and I think Google Maps does a great job. We underestimate the value of this, but Google will give you what it believes is the best route. But it does also give you other opportunities, like other ways. And it just shows you that there isn't just one way to get to a destination, And it's always funny because we see the time that it might take for us to get there. And we all have different reactions to it, right? If we're in LA, we're like, that's a lie. It's going to take at least twice as long, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in another city, you're like, I bet I can get there quicker. That right there is you gamifying the experience of doing something that's so mundane, such as trying to get to a location, right? But we don't consciously realize that this is happening, right? And so when we really take presence to figure these things out, how we can view our lives can dramatically shift how we actually show up in them.
Absolutely. Well, I did your exercise, by the way, after our last live and really sat down and put pen to paper. So I put those in the comments, guys. I think this is such a valuable exercise, like Thomas was sharing. Who am I? Create your character. Who are you? Where am I? Where do I want to go? Like it's also so much fun. And that may change where you want to go, but at least right now, like get it down. And I think these things are so great. So thank you for sharing that and some of these other tangible tips, Thomas. There's so many things we can get into here. But if you've liked what you've heard from Thomas today, which is gold. Thomas, where can everyone find you, get in touch, and learn more about maybe working with you or just getting more information?
Yeah, just go to thomasedwardsjr.com. And I'm also on social media. So most social media, I'm Thomas H. Edwards Jr. with the exception of Twitter. On Twitter, I'm Thomas H. Edwards. DMs are open. Reach out. I'm happy to connect and see what I can do to be of service.
Great. And thank you all so much. This has been so awesome, Thomas, just sharing the space and time with you. We just touched on so many amazing things. Cheers to everyone to find their, one up, we have it and your life is a journey. Have fun with it. Love everything you shared here today. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We'll have more of these inspired conversations coming up. And if you had other questions that maybe we didn't get a chance to answer today, please do feel free to leave those in the chat. We'd love to answer those for you. Thomas, have an amazing weekend.
You too. And thanks so much for allowing me to be here and share the message.
Yeah, thank you for the great work that you do and being a part of it. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon.